Hello, everyone. Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much for being here today, for your interest in this webinar. We are going to start it now here with the Laboratório, with the segunda jornada, the second journey of the LLAC, the Laboratory of Academic Literacy at USP. I'm Gabriella Pavesi. I'm a teacher, an ESL teacher. I am a tutor at the laboratory at LLAC, and I have a master's degree in linguistic and literary studies in English from USP. And today I'll be guiding you in this webinar to help you to understand what disciplinary writing conventions are and how the fact that identifying them in the articles in your field and becoming familiarized with these conventions can help you to improve your own writing, make more adequate linguistic and rhetorical decisions, and therefore facilitate international publication. Okay, so the agenda for today's webinar is threefold. We are going to start with a theoretical background on disciplinary writing conventions. Then we are going to move to becoming familiar with a few of the language features and the textual elements that can be influenced by disciplinary conventions, learn in depth about a few of them, and then do a few strategy practices with the articles that you brought. So when we published the webinar, we asked, please, for you to bring 2 articles that were seminal in your field of study. So if you could have them with you for the webinar, it's going to be easier for you to follow when we get to these strategy practices. And also, if you have comments, you can post them or questions, but we are going to address them at the end of the webinar. Okay? All right, so we are going to start with the theoretical background. So what are disciplinary writing conventions and why they are important for graduate students who are writing and who are trying to publish? So let's start with what it is, right? I brought a few quotes here to contextualize this background, and I'm going to start with Giordano and what they are. So disciplinary writing conventions, they are these specialized standards and guidelines for writing within a field of study, and they're based on how expert readers expect a text to be written. So this last part here of the quote, I find it very interesting and also very important for graduate students to understand, for them to understand the importance of conventions. When we talk about expert readers in our fields, we have, I guess we could say that as graduate students, we have 2, depending on what is the purpose of what we are writing, we're going to have 2 different focus of expert readers. If we're writing a dissertation or thesis, or for our qualification or for our defense, the expert readers at that time, at that moment, would be our supervisors or would be the board that is assessing us. If we are writing an article for publication in an international journal, the expert readers in our field are going to be the reviewers, right? And these reviewers, who again, even if it's a little repetitive, stay with me. These reviewers who are experts, they have expectations on what we are going to write. Not only on what is said in terms of content, but how it is said, how it is presented. And this goes with this determination that they are based on these expectations. We can think of why they are important then. Well, we have here 3 quotes that can guide us into understanding this importance. First of all, they are based on a shared understanding within the discipline of how to communicate effectively They also help to establish cohesion and understanding through mutual expectations. They provide writers with the means to display credentials as disciplinary insiders. And finally, conventions facilitate reading by making material easier to comprehend and creating common expectations between writer and reader. So from all of these, and we go full circle, right? If we go at the end, just when we read, creating common expectations between writer and reader, we go full circle into what they are. So we determine that we have expert readers who are going to read and evaluate our articles, writing pieces, and they have expectations on us, on what we write. So the importance of knowing what these expectations are, what the kind of guidelines and standards in writing that these expectations create are important too. And then summing up these quotes, I think we can have 4 bullet points here to summarize this importance. Effective communication. We can talk about understanding through mutual expectations, facilitate reading and making the material easier to be understood, and again, creating common expectations. And last but definitely not least, as put by Highland here, gives writers, the fact that it gives writers the tools to demonstrate that they are indeed insider in their disciplines, that they are part of the discourse community and they can participate actively on it. So knowing these conventions, becoming aware of them, helps us to become more active participants in our discourse community of our discipline, and therefore facilitates publication. So what are some of these elements in terms of linguistic and textual elements that can be affected or influenced by disciplinary writing conventions? Of course, that I'm not bringing to you all of them, right? It would be impossible to do that, right, in a 1 hour, but I've selected a few that I think are easier to recognize, are constant part of our decision making in terms of writing, because writing is a constant process of making decisions. And we are going to focus on a few of them for this webinar, but I would like to touch on all. So we have reporting verbs, which we are going to discuss in more depth in a minute. We also have meta discourse, I'm also going to talk about citation patterns and citation styles, and the use of first person singular and first person plural, the I and the we. So all of these textual elements can have different tendencies of use across disciplines. Depending on the discipline, you're going to see a difference in decision making and in choices. And before we move on to talking more specifically about the ones that we're going to talk about today, I just wanted to note, because I think this is important to clarify, that citation patterns and citation styles are 2 different things. Okay, they are, yes, both influenced by disciplinary writing culture, but they are different things. So citation styles, it's how we organize the references of our sources, right? So like I put here on the example, on the PowerPoint, APA, MLA, Vancouver, ABNT, depending on your discipline and also on the journal that you choose to submit your article to, you are going to use a different citation style. On the other hand, the citation pattern refers to the content of what you are, of your source, what you are saying, not how you organize the authors, for example, but the content of these sources. And citation patterns include direct citation, for example, versus paraphrasing, right? So these are different things, again, both connected to disciplinary writing conventions, but different things. And so what are we going to focus on this webinar? Which ones are we going to focus more deeply on? Reporting verbs, meta discourse, and citation patterns. So to start, to open these more in-depth discussion of the linguistic textual elements, we're going to start with reporting verbs. So what are reporting verbs? Reporting verbs, in summarizing the concept, it's verbs that we use to refer to the works of other authors. I like to joke with my students that reporting verbs, they set us free from according to. There's nothing wrong with using according to, but we can't use it all the time repeatedly. So sometimes from a habit that comes from high school and even undergrad school, depending on the field, we overuse according to. So reporting verbs, they set us free from that. And there's a great variety of reporting verbs that we can use. And when we decide which one we are going to use in our article or in our dissertation, we have to make a choice. Which one am I going to use here? So, and it's something that occurs frequently is I've had students, or I've had my students or students that come to the lab with an issue of repetition of reporting verbs. So I'm always using explains or says or shows, and I don't know how do I choose a different one. So this choice, it's based on we have to take two things in consideration when we make this choice of which reporting verb to use. The sense of meaning that we want to bring, right? And sense of meaning because it's not only dictionary meaning, right? You have the dictionary meaning, but you have a more broad sense of the meaning that you want to bring into that reference. And the position that you as a writer want to make in reference to both your text and to your source's text. This position can be a little more, can be weaker, can be more neutral, or can also be stronger. So to illustrate what I mean when I'm talking about position in the stance that you take, I brought an example of two sentences with two reporting verbs that have very distinct positions, right? So the sense of meaning here for both verbs is to disagree or to question. And then we have two sentences, one using challenges and one using discards. So I'm going to ask you to here on the comment on the comment chat, if you can, very briefly read both, and from your perception, which one you can write A or B, okay? Which one do you think demonstrates a stronger position in terms of, for example, me as a writer, demonstrates a stronger position in terms of what Smith, the author here, thinks of Johnson's findings. So do you think A or B demonstrates a stronger position in that meaning of disagreeing or questioning? If you could put on the chat. Yeah, so I'm looking here. I'm following your answers. And yes, as I see that you're putting definitely B, right? Discards makes a much stronger stance in eliminating any form of argumentation or negotiation or dispute. I'm discarding, I'm rejecting his claims. So as you can see, one word can completely change my position in regards to my text, to to what I'm writing and to what my source says. So position is very important when we make a decision of which reporting verb we are going to use. Okay, so how do different areas, different fields use and how do different fields make use of reporting verbs? I'm showing you here a table from the source is Wales and Fick, but it's from Hyland, a research by Ken Hyland. Ken Hyland is a British linguist that works with corpus linguistics, which in a nutshell, corpus linguistic is real language, is working with samples of real language in real situations. And this study from 1999, Hyland analyzed a corpus of around 80 articles to observe what was the use of reporting verbs across the disciplines in those articles that he was looking at. So this is a sample of his findings, of his results, and we have it divided between harder and softer sciences and the rank of frequency of these verbs. So on the left, on number 1, you're going to have the most frequent ones, and on the right, the 6th frequent ones, not necessarily the least, but in rank, the 6th frequent ones. I would like you to take a moment and find your area here, or at least the field that approximates most with your area, and see if you recognize some of these words. We're going to look across the line and see if you recognize these verbs. I personally do. When I look at applied linguistics, argue, suggest, I personally recognize these verbs as definitely, I've seen them in articles in my area before. You don't have to use the one you brought yet, okay? From memory, do you recognize these verbs? Briefly take a look. You can write on the chat if you want, or you can just take a brief look. And when we look at the differences in use of these verbs, the frequency or where they appear, it's interesting. I would like to focus on a few verbs here from the harder and the softer sciences in terms of how they appear across fields. If we take, for example, describe and develop, and we briefly analyze this table, for this study, from this specific study, describe and develop appear much more frequently in the harder sciences than in the softer sciences, right? We do have a few instances, for example, of describe in the softer, but in terms of being proportional is much more in the harder sciences. On the other hand, if we focus on find and argue and suggest, we are going to find them much more frequently in the softer sciences than in the harder sciences, right? Suggest is a verb we can see here, especially in the most frequent ones, that appears several times. And it does appear on harder sciences too, but much less. So what does this tell us? Right? Of course, this is a sample. It doesn't analyze all articles in the world. It's a sample from a study. But what it shows us is that there are tendencies. There are verbs that are most commonly used in a few areas, in a few fields, when in comparison to others. Does it say that I could never use describe or develop in softer sciences? Or that I could never know? It's impossible to use argue or suggest in harder sciences. No, of course not. It's not a set of rules, a manual that do this, don't do that. But it does show us how our area tends to behave in terms of choosing reporting verbs. And the choice of reporting verbs and the ones that are, when we observe the ones that are most commonly used in our area also shows the type of research that is conducted and the stance that writers and researchers and their attitude towards the sources that they refer to. So we gather information on the choices that our area most commonly make to posteriorly make our own decisions. So what we are going to do now, focusing on reporting verbs, is do a brief hands-on work with the article that you brought, the seminal article that you brought for the seminar, okay? So I'm gonna ask you to take one of them, all right? And you are going to skim through the theoretical frame or the literature review section of your article. I am suggesting the theoretical frame and literature review, but if you are aware that your field has other sections that could have references to other work, you can read the one that you find yourself more comfortable with, okay? You are going to identify the reporting verbs that you find there, and you are going to report back on Mentimeter. Mentimeter is a survey website, and I'm going to share the screen with you in just a second. Okay, so we're going to do that very briefly. I'm going to give you between 3 and 4 minutes to do that. You are going to read, and you are going to include on Mentimeter the verbs, the reporting verbs that you find. Reminding also that, noticing, reporting verbs not only come from when we are talking about authors. They can be used in the context of the study too. For example, I can say, Pavesi demonstrates something, or I can say this study indicates, this study presents or demonstrates. That's a reporting verb too. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to share the screen of Mentimeter with you, and you're going to find the link and also the code that you have to put. Okay, just a second. Okay, I'm just sharing here. So what you are going to do is you are going to go to this website up here, menti.com. You are going to add this code 106331 and 3, and you are going to notice that a few entrance boxes appear. You can choose to submit one verb at a time. There are going to be 4 boxes, but you can submit one, enter, because you can do multiple submissions. Or you can wait, write all 4, and then submit. And if you find more on the time, you can submit it too. Okay, so I'm going to give you between 3 and 5 minutes, and I would like you to read and report back to me on the reporting verbs that you find. Okay, so thank you very much for your input here. It's very interesting. I was checking the comments, and I wanted to refer back to a comment about Daniela, and then let me see, Lazara Orozco. Yes, you mentioned here the fact that it's hard to see discards, right? It's not a reporting verb that we see that it's very commonly used, or that we can very commonly find in academic texts. And I agree, right? Especially because, like it was put very nicely here, it's too strong, and it takes a position that is like the meaning of the verb eliminates completely this. I was going to use discard again. Completely rejects the other author's work. So I used it purposely because it's so strongly different. Other verbs have a more nuanced difference, but absolutely, Daniela and Lazara, it's not that commonly seen, and I agree that that's the reason why we don't find them that frequently. All right, excellent. So we have here this word cloud that Mentimeter creates from your input. And this word cloud is actually, Mentimeter creates it based on the most frequent ones on the center, and the least frequent inputs become a little smaller on the back. So we see that argue, it's a verb that appeared probably quite frequently in the overall research, short, brief research that you just did now. We have others like demonstrate. We have according to, very good. But just to clarify, it's perfectly okay that it's here, but according to is not really a reporting verb in terms of the definition of it. Okay, I guess we could call it a stretch of language that we use to refer, but it's not a reporting verb in terms of the definition of it. Okay, but yes, it does appear. What else? Let me see. Suggested, compares, presents, offers. Very interesting point too. Very good. So by looking at this, of course, at this moment that we're here, we don't have the areas. I didn't ask for you to add your area of study, right? But the idea here is that it's a moment for us to, as a group, look at this variety of reporting verbs that we can find across fields, and as a strategy, as an exercise that you can apply in your reading of your own articles. What you can do, now going more to the strategy part of it, is create your own glossary of reporting verbs that you commonly find in your area. And I would even suggest that you do it with a short stretch of how it was used, because it can help you remember the attitude of, or the position that the author took at the time. And it helps you linguistically too, to remember what is the position that that verb usually carries when used in academic writing. But when you create this kind of short glossary from your area, we go back to, like I mentioned before, that some students that I attend, or when I write to, sometimes we feel stuck, like, what do I use now? I've used this or this reported verb so many times. You have other options, and not only options in terms of a list of verbs around the world, but options that are used in your field and that are going to help you articulate your text better to your field of study. Okay, so in terms of reporting verbs, we are going to, this was what we had. We are now going to enter citations. And before we get into the actual explaining more about citations and any theoretical content on it, I'm going to take, still on Mentimeter, I'm going to change the screen. I'm going to take a quick survey with you. Without looking at your articles, without doing any kind of, checking any kind of reference, I would like you to give me a, I'm sorry, just a second, I'm sorry, my screen blinked. Here we are. I would like you to refer back to your memory and see if you can remember how citations usually happen in your area. So I'm going to share a different Mentimeter with you, okay? So you can close that and open a new one. Let me see if you can see. Yes. So from memory, no article, don't look anywhere. Go to Menti here, please. Put this code. And you are going to tell me what you remember or what you believe are citation patterns more common to be found in your field of study. And just to clarify here, we have the options that I gave you were direct sentence citation, verbatim, word by word, quotation marks, shorter, block quotations, 4 lines or more, depending on the citation style, could be 40 words, but it's the big ones that we have to usually remove, not usually, we have to remove from the text, make the letters a little smaller, no quotation marks, right? This is a different citation pattern. Paraphrasing of original sources, or perhaps you are not sure, and that's okay too. That's data, right? This is also data for us. So I would like you to go there, menti.com again. Oh, it's not sharing. Is it? It's great. So I would like you to go to Menti again. And here you can choose to just put the one that you find that to be most common or more than one. Okay, I'm going to give you a minute for that. Okay, we have apparently we have almost like a winner over there. Let's see, give you a few more, a little more time just to go through this. Yes, we see. You guys can continue answering, okay? I'm just going to talk to you as you do it. We can definitely see, as I imagined it would be, block quotations in third, right? A little less frequent than paraphrasing or direct sentence citation. They exist absolutely, and they are part of academic writing, but definitely we see this tendency more, I would say in this case, as an introduction across fields, paraphrasing or direct sentence citations. Great. Okay, so paraphrase first. Good to see. Very interesting to see that you guys are aware of, even though we're not looking, there is this perception of citation. That's excellent. That's very good. Okay, great. So we see here, first, paraphrasing of original source. In second place, direct quotations, direct sentence quotations, and then block quotations as the least common one that you believe is in your field of study. So what we're going to do now, we are going to have a very brief theoretical recap on what citations, how citations are divided, the types of citations we have, and then we're going to go hands-on on the article to take a look at the patterns, the actual patterns that we can observe in our texts. All right, so I'm going to share now. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. And I saw in the comments here when you were doing the other activity that some of you commented that my screen was blinking. So I would like to have your feedback. If it's still blinking, I'm going to try to do something different. I'm going to share it differently. So I would like you to tell me, please, if it's still blinking. Just a second. Going back to my... up here. Okay, so I'm on the PowerPoint now. I'm changing to PowerPoint. And as we go through the PowerPoint screen, I would like you, please, if you can put on the comments. Okay, it is okay now. Perfect. Thank you very much. Very good. Thank you. All right. If it does blink eventually, I apologize. It's something with PowerPoint, apparently, so I apologize for that. But I hope it's not blinking to a point that you can't follow. All right, so let's continue. I'm just going to take a sip of water. Excuse me. Oops. Okay, good. So, citation patterns. So we took a look, a more intuitive response on that survey, talking about what we remember of citation patterns in our texts. And now let's see what different patterns are. So as put by Swales and Feek, we can, there are four main characteristics or different takes on how we divide citation patterns. I would say that the two first ones, direct citation and paraphrasing, are more in terms of how we present the content that we're paraphrasing. And the two last ones, integral and non-integral, refer more about how we include the authors of our sources into our text. So direct citations, as you guys, of course, demonstrated, you know, quote by quote, word by word citation. It could be shorter citation in quotation marks. It can be longer citation in block removed from the text. Paraphrase citation, our own words. Now, integral and non-integral. Integral citations, we integrate, hence the name, the author's name into the text that we're writing. And they're also known as author prominent citations. They call attention to who is writing it, not as much on what was done. Of course, what was done is so important, but there is a highlight there on who wrote it. So as an example, we have here Swales and Feek. Here, point out a few aspects to be considered in regards to citation. I have the names of the authors as, like they put it themselves, grammatical part of my text. Non-integral citations, they do not integrate the name of the author into my text. They are also known as research prominent because the focus is more on what was done, what was said, what was argued, than who did it. And we can simplify it by saying that is when the author's name is in parentheses, right? To help us remember. So these are four aspects of not qualities, I would say aspects of citation that can mix and match as we learn about the areas that our areas of study and how our areas write. So I can have direct quote citations that are integral. I can have direct quote citations that are non-integral. I can paraphrase with integral, paraphrase with non-integral. So there is a variety there of how we can present sources in our text. And the interesting part is that we're going to do now a hands-on moment with citations too, but by being aware of the different patterns of citation, or perhaps not so different, maybe something more closed into more common ones, maybe it's one or two different patterns depending on the field. But anyways, being aware of how these citations are organized and presented also helps us to have to diversify our text, right? If I look into how my area cites, how my field works with citations, and I see that I can find a little bit of everything here. I can find direct, both block and quotes. I can find paraphrase. I see integral and non-integral. Then great, I can mix and match in my own text and make my text more dynamic. or if I notice that, well, my area, my field doesn't really present direct quotes. I've never seen a block quotation, or I see direct, the one with the quotation marks, the short direct one, very sporadically here or there. This gives me information that I have to practice my paraphrasing skills, because that's how my area cites, right? So we have information, like I said, to make more informed decisions when we write. So now we're going to do our hands-on moment. We're going to have our hands-on moment with citations. So you are going to take the other article that you brought, and you are going to take a look at the section again. I can initially recommend literature review or theoretical frame, but you are going to go to the, you're going to go to the section that you know in your area that has more references to other works. And just to show you here, just to make a comment on disciplinary culture and disciplinary conventions, some disciplines don't have a literature review in their articles, right? I would be very much used to it because applied linguistics is very common to find, I would say almost, I'm not going to say every article, it's very common to find literature reviews, but other fields don't. So other fields there are fields that work with referring to other authors, for example, in the discussion, when they have to refer to other results to base their own or to compare, to pinpoint differences. So you are going to go to the one that you know that is more, your field cites more, and you are going to identify citation patterns there. So I'm going to share. Now I'm going to go to Mentimeter. We're going to go to Mentimeter again, so you can go to menti.com, and I'm going to go to the Menti screen to give you the codes. Just 1 second, please. Here. Oh, okay. So, all right. Is it in the correct one? Yes. Okay, so you are going to now take the new, take the other article that you brought. You are going to read, and another 5 minutes for you to do so. And you are going to identify citation patterns, and you are going to vote in on the ones that you find more frequently. And I'm going to be here. If you have any questions as you are doing, you can put on the comments too. Okay. Okay, great. I see that you are already adding your perceptions here, your findings. We have more of integral from this moment now, right? We have integral and second non-integral. And then if we compare direct in quote or citation, we have the other one as block. Very good. I would like to take this moment to address here Idania's comment. There was a comment here saying that sometimes integral, when you are mentioning different studies on the same topic and you want to highlight the pioneers in the area of study. Yes, integral, non-integral, absolutely, Idania. Depend also on how many authors you have, right? There's another item that adds to the decision-making process. If you have perhaps I'm sorry, not how many authors, how many studies. If you are paraphrasing a result or an argument that different studies have reached, and you have different studies, therefore several authors to cite, very rarely you're going to see it as integral part, right? This author, and this author, and this author, and this author, and this author, right? Most commonly, if you're mentioning more studies, you're going to have being non-integral, them in parentheses. If you want to highlight the pioneers, absolutely, author preeminent. I want to focus on, I want to say who did that, because perhaps that author, the author of the text, is an important part of what I'm doing, and citing them in terms of making them an integral part has relevance to my study, has relevance to my research. So I'm going to make that choice. Absolutely. Yes. All right. Very good. So here we have different patterns that you identified by looking at your articles. And like I mentioned before, knowing these patterns help you make decisions, taking into consideration other elements, like Idania mentioned, for example. You want to highlight a pioneer. You want to highlight the author of that source because it is relevant to your research. But it gives you information. It shows you how your area tends to behave, which is going to help you write, help you to fulfill these expectations that we have, that the area has of you as a graduate student writing for publication, right? And finally, we're going back to the PowerPoint, and I'm going to briefly talk about meta discourse. We're not going to have a hands-on moment on meta discourse right now in the webinar. You can absolutely do it later. It's like a homework, let's call it like that, for you to do it perhaps later as you are reading your articles by yourself. So what is meta discourse? Okay, meta discourse are textual elements, language that does not add content to your text. Meta discourse is not about the content. It is about helping the reader read your text, navigate through your text. So when we go with meta discourse, this table is from Highland and Say. They divide meta discourse into two different types, two different criteria. Textual elements that help the reader navigate throughout the text, which is the interactive one, and meta discourse textual elements that help author positions themselves, and also create a relationship with the readers. So we have, for example, focusing here on just to pinpoint a few examples, in interactive resources, we have endophoric markers, for example, that refer to information that is on different parts of the text. So I want to refer to a figure, to a table, or I want to refer back to something I already said in a different section or chapter of my text. Or I want to highlight to my reader what I'm going to do next in the next chapter, or say, you know, I'm going to address this more deeply in the next section. So end of work markers create this, help my reader to know where to look and where to go to keep engaged on my text. This is just an example, right? And in interactional resources that create this relationship with the reader and that position the author too, I think that it's interesting to focus on hedges, boosters, and engagement markers. Hedges make the writer a little distant from the text. They make the commitment to the sentence weaker, let's call it. So I can use might, perhaps, possible. While boosters do the opposite. I make a stronger stance when I use them. In fact, definitely, it's clear that. And an interesting one that we can take a look that perhaps can be uncommon to some areas, can be more frequent in others, it's engagement markers. When you make this explicit relationship to your reader, even use the word you. Consider, note, you can see, you can observe, you can recognize. I'm expanding a little bit from these examples. So meta discourse, these textual elements, they also can vary from area to area. And this last table that I bring you, it's a mix of meta discourse and citation, a more recent study from Highland across articles, where he compares citations and meta discourse elements throughout fields. So we have, for example, self-mention, the I, right? From his study in 2017, from these results, much more common in arts and humanities than science and engineering. Citation, the direct citation in this case. Also, self-citation, on the other hand, a little more common in science and engineering. And according to Highland himself in the study, a possibility for that is that in science and engineering, there is a tendency to refer more to other works done by other studies conducted by the author to build on their present results. That the research is also ongoing in terms of different studies that I have to conduct or that correlate with each other. And the hedges and boosters that we had from the previous slide, right? I'm just coming back to remember. The hedge as might, perhaps, the booster as definitely and clear. Also a considerable difference in arts and humanities with science and engineering. So this table also shows us how it's another example of how these habits, these tendencies of use change and vary across disciplines. And to wrap up this webinar, so we can go, I'm sorry, I'm right on time, but I apologize if it was a bit, I got into sharp on time. But I think that to wrap up, I've showed you a few examples of linguistic elements, textual elements, and data research studies that show this variety among fields. And I refer back to something I said at the beginning. Becoming aware of these tendencies, of these conventions, help us to write texts that fulfill better the expectations of our field. So I would invite you, when you read articles in your area, don't read only for content and for data information, but also look with eyes on what are the discourse and rhetorical practices of your field. So you can use these elements, these observations to guide you on your own writing. And like Highland said, show your credential of being of belonging to that discipline, of being a participant of that discipline. And therefore, writing texts that communicate more clearly, more objectively and effectively with your field, and facilitating international publication. And that was it. I thank you very much for being here today and for your interest. This is my contact email, and we can open for questions now. If you have any questions, I'm going to stop sharing and I can check your comments there. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to take a look at the previous comments too to see if I can address any questions you may have here. If you want to ask again anything that you asked throughout the webinar that I didn't address. Thank you very much. Let me see if there's anything on top that I missed. Okay, so Pedro here, history, right? Interesting. They love footnotes. While reading articles and papers, we must check on almost every author that is cited by the researcher who wrote the paper we are reading. Okay, so you are finding, that's also a habit, check on the authors that your source, let me rephrase. When you're reading an article and you have the author of that article is citing other authors, yes, absolutely. I would say that not just history, Pedro. It's good practice. You look at it, it's interesting, especially, of course, on the comments or the data that it's interesting to you. That's how we build our repertoire of sources and references. Very good. And footnotes. These footnotes, would you say that they are to make comments on the text or to talk about the authors that they are citing? Andresa, would you recommend to use similar text organization as section division? I'm sorry, Andresa, what do you mean in terms of section division from your from your sources? You mean introduction? That's what you mean, the introduction? Then if you're going to have, if that's what you mean, having an introduction, then having a, reference. Oh my God, I missed the word, has just skipped my mind. Literature review section, I'm sorry. And methodology, yes, I think that it's interesting to observe, in this case, especially, Andresa, on the journal that you're going to publish, okay? I would say you consider both. You consider how your area behaves in terms of articles, but you also look on the journal that you're going to publish. Reading, and this is a tip, I think that it's very important, helps me a lot, and that I've learned throughout these studies. When you're going to submit an article, choose the journal that you want to submit to and read the articles that are submitted there, right? Take a look of how the text is organized too, because that can help you to organize your text in a way that not only fulfills your field's expectations, but also the journal's expectations, which are important too in terms of organization. I would say that. Okay, so they are used to other authors. All right, very good. And many a time, the highlights appear more extensively in footnotes, right? The highlights, do you mean the hedges, the maybe, perhaps? I'm not sure I was understood completely what you mean by highlights, Fatima, here. If you could just clarify, please. Thank you. No problem, Andresa. Thank you very much for your question. Hi, Danny. Yes, you have the IMRAD, right? Introduction, methodology, results. I can't remember all of them by heart right now. Yes, that's, I would say that that's the traditional, right, organization and the most common organization that we have in terms of organizing the information and the sections in your article. Yes, I mentioned observing the area of study, for example, from this example that I mentioned before. There are some areas that don't have a literature review or theoretical background section. They discuss that on the discussion section or on the methodology, depending on, they refer back to other methodologies. So depending on the area, that could be a little variation on that. But yes, IMRAD is a very good way to go. Yes. There's another comment on the area. Reporting verbs. Okay. I think that Highlands works on reporting verbs. Of course, I cited his work and used his work as reference repeatedly here. So Highlands work on reporting verbs. You have also Swales and Feek, Academic Writing for Graduate Students. It's a book. It's an excellent book to help you. There are different sections, but you have a section on summarizing and with some input on reporting verbs. There is on the University of Adelaide in Australia, inside their writing center section of their website, they have a very good handout on reporting verbs with a table that gives you different positions: neutral, weaker, neutral, and stronger. Also with the meanings. So it's University of Adelaide in Australia, and it's inside their writing centers page. Okay. Any other questions? Sure, absolutely. So is academic writing, the two sources that I mentioned, academic writing for graduate students from Swales and Feek, is John Swales and Christine Feek. Thank you very much, Daniela. And it's right there, Daniela put on the website, on the comments. And the other one is the University of Adelaide. I can't comment here. Oh, I can't actually. Give me 1 second. And I'm just gonna take a look here so I can spell it correctly. If you Google University of Adelaide reporting verbs, University of Adelaide here. If you Google University of Adelaide reporting verbs, the first result is this PDF, and it's a very interesting PDF with some information on reporting verbs, even how you work with the verb in terms of prepositions and these differences in positions too. And you're very welcome. And the article section is first mentioned in the discussion. Yes, see, good, Pedro, thank you. Yes, you wouldn't have the theoretical section in your area. Very interesting. I've worked with the Instituto de Matemática e Estatística, IME, Mathematics and Statistics Institute. I taught a class there, and some students brought me the information of not having the theoretical frame section in their articles. So interesting to know that in history too. Very good, thank you. Yes, so thank you for putting the link there. Yes, Jose, well, use of metaphors in academic writing in terms of in-text use of metaphors, textual elements, I don't have that much information to bring you. I can tell you that what I did, I can tell you that there is let me organize my thoughts here. We most commonly than not use metaphors without even realizing to talk about academic writing and to talk about how we see academic writing and our relationship with it. So when we use expressions such as, oh, and we use that in Portuguese a lot, this gave me a sweat, eu suei para fazer isso, this gave me a sweat. This is metaphorical, it's about the hard work that we put into it. So I can say that, we use this metaphor, we can use a metaphor maybe to talk about, like this, entering this field of, when we learn these conventions and we start to apply them into a writing, it's like entering this bit of wild forest that we've been wanting to enter for a long time, right? And being more recognized for what we're doing. And yes, I would say that academic writing and scientific writing, I would say that they're my view on it. I'm telling you how I see it, okay, Dani? I'm not using any terminology definition here, but scientific writing refers, I would say, more exclusively to publication. When we are writing articles to be published, we're producing science. On the other hand, academic writing can be also in undergraduate level. You can write papers for an English 101 class or an English composition class. This is academic, involves the type of language that you are using, the change in audience, especially when compared, for example, to high school, when we are writing, the audience is our teacher, but not necessarily academic. We put some elements, depending on the school you go to, depending on a lot of factors. But the academic is the moment you enter in college, it can refer to undergrad. Whereas scientific, I would say it's focused on publication, on graduate level, publishing in journals and perhaps even books, but it's more focused on publication. And I guess that is it. Does anyone else have questions? So thank you very much for your presence here today. I hope you enjoyed and that it can help you with your writing, and the best of luck and success to all of you in your scientific and academic endeavors. Thank you very, very much, everybody. Bye-bye.